the reason I wanted to kind of start these, I guess I'm about 5 months into my mayorship here, and just wanted to start something that I feel is important for the community in the sense that there's a lot of information that I find is I don't know. You can just say that it's not correct information out in the community. So I felt like if we could do this, maybe update our ability to communicate to the residents and businesses in the community, and get them some information straight from our mouths, and able to talk about what's going on and all the work that's going on in the city, to be able to relate that to the folks. I think that would be good. So this is our first time just giving it a shot to see how things would work in terms of just kind of talking back and forth about what you're working on, what I'm working on, what we're working on together, and what things look like. So opening it up, I think everybody's always most curious right now about the mill and how things are going. I know we've talked to different outlets, news outlets, and that kind of stuff. Sometimes it's kind of quick and more formal. So I wanted to just give us a chance to talk about the mill and how things have transpired over the last 5 months and where things are at right now, and get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, in terms of an update, I think the more recent news was the craft mill on the north side slated for demolition. So CRG had partnered with MRD. Don't mix up the acronyms, there are quite a few. But MRD is the demo contractor. CRG owns majority of the paper mill, and MRD will be demolishing the craft mill, possibly starting by the end of this year into early next year. And that includes also removing PM14, paper machine 14, out of the base mill location closer to the river. Along with the demo, though, comes quite a bit of prep work. So the contractor will probably be on site over the next couple of months doing asbestos abatement. Well, first asbestos testing, then asbestos abatement, and then they'll probably start getting heavy equipment on site before the end of the year into early next year. So from a community development standpoint, I've kind of told people where one door closes, another opens. So I tend to be optimistic and look at this as an opportunity, right? Another door that's opened for future development to occur on the site when that craft mill is down. It is already a very strong site in that it has 80 megawatts power, could possibly be increased to 150. It's serviced by DNR permit to draw water down from the river. It's relatively flat. It's got rail access. So these are all things big industrial users look for when they're locating in a community or developing a site. And with the craft mill gone, it increases the acreage by about 50 to 75 acres, creating a 200 to 250 acre site, which could be broken off into a few different sites, or it could be marketed to one developer. Generally, what we've seen is that there's been a lot of interest from local businesses looking to take the next step in their business in terms of growth, and they've inquired to CRG about smaller outlots, smaller parcels, smaller buildings, which is very neat to see, because to land the big fish in the water, right, to get that big user is tough. But a lot of local businesses have stepped up and said, hey, you know what? I can get that building for a reasonable price. It's the smaller outbuildings. Right. I can grow my business in that space. And there have been about close to a half a dozen businesses that have shown interest. A couple of them that have parceled out a few acres or purchased a building that formerly Billerud owned, now CRG. And we'll see some of those buildings transition over time, cars back in the parking lot, people on site. So good things are happening. It's just going to take a little longer for the bigger picture items to unfold in terms of the craft mill's demolition and possibly a new user months down the road or years down the road for a majority of the site.
Yeah, can you take a step back? Since we kind of started this whole process with CRG when they bought the facility, it seems like they've kind of, I don't know if they term it this way, but when I explain it to people, I'm kind of using the term condominium style, like where they're they're maintaining the ownership of the land, but then they're selling the buildings off to different industrial companies that are using those buildings for their industry needs, their processes. Can you go through some of the companies that have already bought into those buildings and kind of what they're doing, as much as we can information as we can give, anyways?
Yeah, the one example that's up and running is Fuller Mechanical. They bought an outbuilding off of Fifth and Der Beauty, kind of by the craft mill, but to the west. So they've relocated their business there. The others are still in the works. There's another individual looking at our business looking at the former maintenance shop
Mm-hmm.
on the north side. There's a few looking at parcels on the base mill here, closer to downtown. I'm not sure if those sales have
Mm-hmm.
occurred yet, so I'd withhold those businesses and the names. But it's exciting. It's really exciting. I think CRG, at the end of the day, if they can make a deal, if they've got a local business or regional business or out of town business, I think if it makes sense to them, if they're getting a fair price for the land, they will entertain those smaller offers.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they'd like to land that big fish. They'd like to get that big user. They'd like to obviously find a user for the PM16 paper machine 16 building, and or a buyer for the paper machine itself. But I think that is more long term
yet. I know there's whisperings, but
there's been interest.
Yeah.
But yeah, nothing at this point has come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes interest can spark other interest or can be the catalyst to other things. And so I'm very optimistic about the whole thing. And I think we have to, we can step back further and recognize also that we still have Sunoco operating in the base mill.
Right.
So they're employing about 100 people. They're looking to grow in the base mill. So you'll see Sunoco sign on the side of the building as you come over the Jackson Street Bridge. Cars still in the parking lot, and they're still doing good there.
Mm-hmm.
We also have Billerud doing paper converting in the converting building, which is along the river behind the paper machine 16 building. They again have multiple shifts and have near 100 employees working in the converting operations. I would foresee the converting operations to occur for the next several years, 5+ years, because they are not investing. Billerud is not investing as much money and capital into their Escanaba mills. So I think it just solidifies the converting operations here in Rapids. So we still have a good 200+ employees at the base mill portion of the site. Some of them will continue to make investments in the site, which increase value, which is a good thing for the downtown and the community.
And then 9 ND papers also played a part in the. I kind of see this as a conversion from one mill facility into an industrial park. Doesn't have a name on it, but still an industrial park nonetheless. Sunoco, if I understood, Sunoco also bought the water purification center where they can take water out of the river and purify it for the needs of themselves and other companies there.
I believe they were looking at it. Don't necessarily know for sure. Again, when we have those conversations, we're not, at the Register of Deeds office looking for the deed transfer to confirm that people have purchased or not. But I know other infrastructure, as you mentioned, water quality has been purchased by Nine Dragons, which obviously takes the Nine Dragons waste and treats it. So again, said at the beginning, one door closed in terms of the paper mill shuttering, but it has opened the door to a lot of other businesses taking advantage and capitalizing on the mill shuttering. And I'd like to think we will continue down that trajectory. And we've got a lot of partners, a lot of people at the table still in terms of assistance. Some by the WEDC, which is the state's economic development agency, the DNR, and others that are trying to continue that conversation, find interested parties, and help in any way they can.
Yeah, I was impressed to learn over the last couple of months just how in depth, I guess in the end, it's like real estate on a really large level, and how many, you know, people are involved at local levels to the state level to the national level to the world level, because you're dealing with, land size, building size, electricity sizes that, not too many people fit into that realm of marketing and what they're looking for. So that's kind of been fun to see, because I didn't fully understand like how in depth that process was and how interconnected the world is that way on that large scale. Um, so I think from my take on it, like what I learned as I would go out and talk to people in the community and businesses about, what was happening at the mill, it was kind of like I had to learn quickly, like there's excitement about, you have to have excitement about the future, and that's where we kind of have to live. But at the same time, I had to also be very respectful to remember like the amount of blood, sweat, and tears and history, and how many families were brought up on the mill and what it did and how it was built, and then going through the mills and see like how well they're built, and the size of the mechanic shops inside where they were building all this equipment themselves, what they could build, to be able to build this massive company that
Mm-hmm.
did what it did, in these huge machines that unless you see them, you can't necessarily comprehend what it is they're talking about when they say a big paper machine, and but just the emotions that go into that from the people that put their life to work into that mill, is to be respectful of that is pretty awesome, and humbling, I think, would be the best word for it. But it's been I've been very fortunate to be a part of that whole process and to be able to see that and have the respect for it, but at the same time, be free to do our job and the trust of the community to do our job, so that we can try to help do what we can to fill those buildings with new businesses and diversify our economy in Wisconsin Rapids away from one large company into, right now it's three and some smaller ones that are there, but it could be anywhere from 15 to 20 at some point in time that are all working. They're there for the power and the water and the waste,
Right.
the waste center. So it can definitely be a beautiful thing, and hopefully as that kind of grows, and we've built in the Y and the Boys and Girls Club and the VA center, and we're building these different things on the west side of the city to be able to capitalize on that and keep that momentum going and help out the west side in different ways. I know we're just tapping into right now, seeing it's been talked about over the years, moving the railroad track, what that would look like, taking care of those businesses that are still dependent on that railroad track being there. So I'm looking forward to diving into that better. There's, I guess, we just spent a lot of time and put in that grant for the planning phase of seeing, basically getting everybody together at the table to see if this is possible, and if it is possible, what it would look like, what it would cost, and how that would play out. We did just submit that grant. We got letters of support from obviously the city, the county on different levels, Port Edwards on a few different, the public school system of Port Edwards, and the government. ERCO ended up sending in a letter. Chemtrade got us an email on a little bit shorter notice. That's the chemical company that's on 12th Avenue, to just have a conversation. CN Railroad supported us. The state, Wisconsin DOT supported us. So I think that's a big part of this whole West Side improvement project, as well as when we just talk about that, then that includes the whole downtown project that you've been working hard on. And if you want to, what are your thoughts? Like, how are things going with that at this time?
Yeah, so the downtown project is nearing completion. I think the consultant that's been hired, Bolton and Mink, hopes to complete it by the end of the year, possibly then have council adopt it early next year. But they actually are, in the next 2 weeks, going to be visiting the city again from October 9th to October 11th. The 9th is a Wednesday, so through Friday. During that time, we are partnering with them to schedule and hold some open houses where they can share preliminary data, preliminary findings. They'll have maps, some renderings, which has been based on their analysis of the downtown, the community. It's been based on all of the feedback we've received from some of the stakeholder meetings, from the Mind Mixer online engagement website. So it's all sort of coming to fruition to create what I'll call kind of the preliminary findings for the downtown master plan. Those open houses are now being finalized again through the 9th and the 11th of October, and we'll be likely releasing those by the end of the week in terms of if you want to participate, you want to show up for an open house, you want to get yourself more engaged, and you want to provide your feedback. I think that's still critical at this point in time with the project. There'll be some night opportunities and some daytime opportunities for you to do that. We're looking at holding four open houses total, and then the same information at the open houses will be provided on that public engagement website, which is the Mind Mixer website for the project, probably around the same time or shortly after October 11th. But in terms of what I've seen on the downtown plan and some of the findings, it's all coming together nicely. It recognizes a lot of the development that's occurred as of recently with regards to the downtown mall project, the county courthouse construction, some of the major road reconstruction projects that have occurred, or the ones that are slated to occur, like East Jackson Street. And then it obviously hones in and focuses in on some of our downtown redevelopment areas, including the Tribune block, the Triangle block on the east side. They're focusing now on the U.S. Bank parcel that's for sale, that entire city block not too far from here. And then they're looking at corridors as well, the corridors into the community, on how those can be improved upon. A lot's been done to those corridors over the last couple of decades. But the planning document that they're creating is planning for the next 10 to 15 years. And with aging infrastructure and changing business and development trends, we want to make sure that that plan will be able to be carried out during that time frame.
Yeah, I think they've done a good job. I was able to speak with them, and they did a real good job of just kind of opening up and getting involved with the people and building some relationships so people will speak freely about their ideas and their thoughts. And again, I know the tricky part about master plans or anything of this sort is the community, people in the community. A lot of times, depending on which side they fall on, will think that it's just another thing that's going to get put on a shelf somewhere and forgotten about, and then you spent all this money on it. For me, I understand that from that perspective, but I think the way we have to look at it from our perspective is it won't be a waste of time if we keep it in the forefront and we capitalize on some of the ideas. Again, the trickiest part to this whole thing is we can have, as the government, we can have all the ideas we want, but if we don't partner with somebody with the capital and the experience and the know-how to make something a reality, then so that's the goal for me right now, is to make sure that through all of our efforts we are able to build those relationships and get some of these things up and running so that people can see the results of that project, and then it pays for itself in the sense of helping us develop our downtown area, our community, our economy. It all kind of plays together, because the more development there is, the more money we are able to work with in order to help the economy again, or the community grow. So it's like the circle of money that keeps going around.
Right, and typically anyone who's making an investment in a community, whether it's in a downtown or elsewhere, wants to know that the city is also on board and has a plan to continue to improve the space that they're investing their dollars in as well. So a downtown plan like this can go a long way for attracting development, and obviously development itself is a catalyst to other development, right? If you can get some mixed use housing in the downtown, right, let's say 50 to 60 units, those residents are hopefully spending more of their time downtown, and that may be the draw for additional restaurants or retail to locate also in downtown. And if we identify continued growth on public infrastructure, place-making initiatives, you talked about how we would maintain the kind of history of the paper mill. And I think one critical way we can do that is through some of our public infrastructure, is to inject some murals or some art or whatever it may be, to be a testament and kind of showcase our history and showcase the paper mill and how we got to where we are today through those placemaking initiatives. And so I think we'd be looking to continue to do that, again, make the downtown more of a destination, beyond just a 9 to 5 work environment for people. Downtown's much different at night if you come down here during the weekdays or even on the weekends, unless obviously there's an event going on. And I think most downtowns flourish because they have that nightlife, because they have the people down there, they have the activities, they have the retail, they have the restaurant. So this is a starting point that I'd like to think will hopefully lead to some good things for the downtown to come.
Yeah, could you I noticed there's, as I'm a part of the government, there's words and lingo that are there that I don't know if everybody uses. Can you define or explain like placemaking?
Yeah, so placemaking has been a trend used among city planners for quite some time, and it's gained popularity. Previously, you'd planners would build it and hope people came, right? In terms of like, we'd build the infrastructure, extend the utilities, put a for sale sign up, and sometimes people would come, sometimes they wouldn't. An example that I can reference locally is the Woodlands Business Park, right?
Mm-hmm.
Put in all the roads, put in all the infrastructure, and it's been very difficult to get businesses to locate within the park. Even with city incentives, I think now the thought is, well, if you create the place, you create or you entice, right, business, you create art, the infrastructure, you kind of make it an environment that people want to be in rather than a business park off on the periphery of the city. It'll be a draw for additional investment in that place, right? A place where people can spend all of their time and not just get in their car and drive to it during the work hours, get in their car and drive home. So there's a sense of like placemaking, and you can do it a number of ways, right? You can do it from something we recently did, which is wayfinding, right? We built a whole wayfinding network on our trail system, which we always had the trails, but it was never really interconnected from a wayfinding standpoint to tell you where you are on the trail, where you can get to, how many miles it is. We created a loop network on different loops you can do if you're on the trail system. And that could even be built out further with some of our surrounding communities. But that's one example that those signs, they were costly. And right, I think you could have done it a lot cheaper and a lot more simple, but I think they help to build that sense of place, knowing if you're walking, if you're at lunch by the river and you see those signs, it's kind of a statement or a testament to that character we want to create in the downtown. We did it with our riverfront redevelopment, right? The riverbank redevelopment that occurred in the last couple of years, right? Investing in the stage and the permanent seating, the landscaping features, the boardwalk, so to speak, the overhang out on the river. All those different improvements help to build that sense of place, which are more attractive to business and residents who want to be in that place.
Yeah, it's a little tricky if you think, just seeing the pictures of even before the mill and when it was a lumber company and how they did that and how the cities, grew from what they were into what they are now and what came and left. But what I see more than anything is that the planning didn't start right away. Like, I don't think we talked, back when cities were first developing. And so you just had people who had the means and the vision and idea to do this, build this store, and everything just kind of happened the way it happened, and the roads happened the way they happened. And so it seems like what we're being asked to do now is almost take things from, after the fact and saying, okay, everybody's saying, well, how do we get this to look nicer and be more organized and kind of have that, I don't know if it's symmetry, because that's kind of out the door in terms of like how the roads kind of, they are what they are. We're not going to uproot everything and change how roads kind of evolved over time, but they're being asked through codes and through ordinances to kind of reform a city and organize it in a certain way, which isn't always easy, because you're fighting what is versus what you want to see in the future. um, I guess this is a time to be able to, you've shared a lot with me, like the struggles with that, but how you see it and how you see your role in the city, what you've been hired to do. How do you see that, and how do you reckon all those different things coming at you at the same time? I always say, like, you're being asked to help the city, but at the same time you're also being asked to be the guy in charge of the department that has to say no. So it's like two contradicting forces
It
sometimes.
is a tough hat to wear, to be in charge of economic development as well as city planning and zoning, right? Economic development's about getting the business here or helping the business grow and expand and possibly offering some assistance, and then putting on your planning or zoning hat and saying, but you need this much of a setback and you can only build to this height, and you need to go to plan commission for this review, or you need to get this conditional use permit. That might be one of the most difficult parts of my job, because I want to see the businesses succeed. I want to provide that assistance. And then we have kind of the rules and regulations that have to commingle, if you will. I'm hopeful that I try to upfront and early on share the information, like, if a business is looking to expand, oh, by the way, to do so, here's what needs to happen, and try to clearly identify the requirements if they move forward with expansion or growth or whatever it may be. But it is difficult when you've got a lot of nonconformities, meaning that the downtown was built prior to zoning, built prior to our current regulations, and so it's considered non-conforming, meaning it doesn't conform to today's standards and today's codes and ordinances. Sometimes within the code we have special exceptions for those non-conforming uses, where you can continue the use but you can't expand, or if you expand it has to be in a certain way, or if you want to expand you have to receive that special approval, because again the code, it was built today or in the last couple of years, and so it's primarily addressing today's development trends, today's growth patterns,
Right.
Today's requirements, very similar to what other communities have,
Right.
that enforce zoning codes, but it has to recognize the past, and somewhat offer a means for some level of exception. The last thing I want to do in community development and overseeing the department is to be the burden for someone, to be that red tape for them. Oftentimes that's the way it is, and that's the way it's looked at, but it's not my intent. My intent is not to restrict somebody, but it is my job to enforce the codes that the city has adopted,
Right.
the elected officials have adopted, but those same elected officials have the power to amend the code or to change the code.
Right.
They may not choose to do so always, for one individual or one example, but they do hold that power. And there have been instances where businesses have pursued conversations with the elected official and things have got amended for the right reasons, but it usually has a process. That
Right.
process can take 30 to 60 to 90 days
Right.
sometimes, and it may or may not be in their favor or their benefit. But it's not, the enforcement of those codes and ordinances isn't because I'm choosing to enforce it. It's because they're in place, they've been adopted, and
Right.
they exist. My failure to enforce them would be
Yeah.
my failure to do my job, which would then put me in jeopardy. And I always tell people, if I'm not here enforcing that code, somebody else will be hired to do the job and enforce that code.
The reason I kind of chuckle a little bit is because, since I've been in, and I don't think people mean it. I don't know. I think they're just, giving it a shot. Basically saying, can we just, can I just do this? Don't worry about the code, stuff like that. I'm like you can't do that, because if we do it for you, word's gonna get out, small town, and then I got to do it for somebody else, or if I start just doing anything everybody wants, it's going to turn it into chaos. And then there was no reason for the code to begin with. So we have to stay within the code and then get the variances when we need to, and be able to have the conversations with the aldermen to be able to say, hey, this is not working, and we need to change an ordinance or a code, specific code within the ordinance here. And it's a slow process, but that's the best way to do it. But I do want to just reinforce what you said. Like everything we have right now has been voted in by us, the people who live in the city that vote on their aldermen, vote their mayor in, and everybody talks, and we get stuff brought to us like this is what this is going to help, because the reason our code is strict now for the zoning code, my understanding, you can clarify this, is a lot of people wanted to make A Street and other areas more naturally beautiful over time. And the only way we can do that is to say, well, we got to have some space for green, trees and plants and bushes, and that's all on A Street. And A Street became a very concrete asphalt road, and we need it to look nicer over the years. And the only way we can do that is to filter in these things over the years as one building site goes down and a new one is being rebuilt. We got to put that stuff in there so that it's there in the future. But at the same time, it's not met by goodwill all the time when people are told they got to do X, Y, Z, and this and that. And so I see the struggles you go through, but everybody does have to understand that we put it on ourselves. It wasn't this government that's out there that's trying to restrict us or hold us down or put their thumb on us. It was we the people that actually voted it all in over the years and just built on itself.
Yes, I would agree with that, with the exception that communities have local controls and local rules and regulations. So most communities sign ordinance, their property maintenance ordinance, their zoning code, all local controls. There are some state statutes that connect, like limit what a city or government entity can enforce and control. One thing is more certain that we would have little control over are the state and the federal codes, like the ADA standards, like the state electrical code, plumbing code, the uniform dwelling code for residential properties. That's a code that the state's adopted, and we are a delegated agent to the state, and so we are enforcing those codes, and we don't have the ability or the means to amend those codes. We can't, for example, adjust the railing height of a deck. It's in the code, the UDC, or a step height for a stair, and that's the way it has to be administered. And it's important to note that those codes, again, residential and commercial codes, they're the same if you develop in Rapids or you develop in Marshfield or Wausau or Stevens Point. Their inspectors are enforcing those same codes, with the exception of the zoning code, sign code, and property maintenance code, and we have several other local codes. But UDC, plumbing code, it's primarily universal.
All right. So then we do have some say over what the zoning code was after that, like just to explain that further. So where did getting in the green space and all that stuff?
That's all within the zoning code. Yep. So the landscaping standards for new businesses, the parking lot standards for, if you want to redo your parking lot, reconstruct your parking lot, that's all outlined in the zoning code, which we have more control over to amend and to change than the building code that talks about insulation and again HVAC requirements and plumbing requirements, electrical requirements.
Okay.
That's all pretty limited on any amendments or changes we can make to that.
And do you have the history on like kind of where our zoning code came in?
So the zoning code was rewritten in 2018, meaning that the code prior was from the 90s. They basically repealed the entire old zoning code and adopted this new zoning code. There were some similarities between the codes in terms of like setbacks. The setbacks for most communities from the front yard is 25 feet. That's pretty standard. But there was a whole heck of a lot of other stuff that they incorporated or overhauled within the code. Landscaping standards, some architectural guidelines for new construction, parking lot standards, were overhauled. And then it identifies different review criteria, having to go to plan commission for site plan review, plan of operations review. If you're a business, you've got to identify, when you're operating, your hours, employees, things like that. That's all somewhat been added within today's code that we're currently enforcing. But we have the ability to change it.
Yeah.
The elected officials can make those changes if they want to streamline or improve the city's process for development.
Yeah, I think we do definitely have aldermen that are willing to sit down, and because in the end it's a lot of information you got to weed through, and if you're going to try to make, it's probably not sweeping changes in the end. It's going to be, I don't want to say case by case, but usually, like, what I've seen is we've passed the code in 2018, but until something is actually put into a real life situation, and you start talking about it, and then you realize the constraints that have been put there, then you realize that it wasn't really necessary to begin with, and that's when you start the long process of changing something in order to let a sign be there and it's not hurting anybody, but you still have to have it within the code, which is changing ordinances to make it happen. So but yeah, we are doing that tough work to make that happen. I certainly, I understand that as a business owner and a resident and just person in the community. I like getting to see it from this side now. So I do understand both sides of it. But ultimately, I think the less red tape we can put on ourselves, the better. But at the same time, we still want to do things that are going to help improve the aesthetics of our city over time. And when I drive down A Street now, I understand the roads are a completely different ballgame in terms of where they're at, and people worried about those. But the aesthetics of it, when you drive past the newer construction, it's green. There's bushes, there's trees. It looks nice, and then you keep going, and it's all cement and it's all pavement, and there is a difference between it, and it's going to take time. But over the years, it will make a big difference, and people will be happier with how A Street looks over time. It just doesn't happen overnight. So
that is the intent. Yeah.
So, what else do you have going on that you'd like to talk a little bit about?
Recently, there was a foundry plan. So the foundry site on Goggins and the Expressway, as you're coming into the downtown from the southwest, so you're on the west side of the river. The foundry burnt in 2017, sat vacant for quite a while, and then the county was able to take it on back taxes back in 2023 last year, with the intent that the city would eventually transfer, they do a deed transfer to the city, and then the city is pursuing grants to clean it up, to do some environmental testing, clean it up, demolish the building, and entice future development. While this was going on within the last couple of years here, and the county obtained the property last year, the EPA and the DNR reached out and said, here's some funds available to do a site-specific plan for the foundry site. That site-specific plan was completed last month. I believe it's on our website, or it will be shortly, and that identifies potential future use for the property. At this point, it's been identified in the highest and best use to be either mixed use, meaning that there's housing and some other commercial component, or just housing in the form of condos or more dense kind of high-rise housing there. The unfortunate part with the foundry site is that in doing environmental testing and cleanup, we're somewhat relying on grants from the DNR, grants from the WEDC, and so there's a process, a grant cycle where we're waiting and utilizing those grants as necessary. So unfortunately, that foundry site likely won't be at a state of ready for development for 3 to 5 years from now, due to those grant cycles, due to the the contamination requirements. If there is contamination found on the site, now we have to go through the DNR's hoops and hurdles to clean it up, retest the site, before we can redevelopment. And so those steps are underway. And I'd like to think within the next 3 years, 2 to 3 years, hopefully, we'll see a lot of progress at that foundry site. But we do have a plan now that focuses in on the foundry site for redevelopment, which we can start enticing different developers if they want to get engaged during this redevelopment process, in hopes that once it is down and cleaned up, that we'd have a development ready to go. The other thing, unless you have a comment that I wanted to mention, was in regards to historic preservation.
I just, if you could clarify a little bit more, like, I think the redevelopment is one thing, but just getting it out of there is really what everybody wants. I mean, this is a point of contention for certain people, but more and more people do ask me about it. Why is it that we can't just, come to an agreement with the state and say, what do we need to do in order for us to be able to just get in there and get it out of there, so that right for now it's just an open field and that bit of an eyesore isn't there? What's prohibiting that?
So one, obviously the county owns it. So ideally we'd like to have the property before we do anything to it. The DNR has said with potential contamination sites, you want to do what's called a phase 1 site investigation prior to taking the property or prior to transferring the deed to the city's ownership. And that's to protect you from EPA liabilities, meaning that you'll be more protected if there's contamination found than you would be if you did not have that phase 1 environmental site assessment. In order to get that phase 1 environmental site assessment, we've applied to the DNR for a grant because they will cover the entire cost for that assessment. They will also cover the cost to a certain extent for soil sampling thereafter, as well as remediation, building demolition, site cleanup. So the way I look at it is, if these agencies, the DNR, the WEDC, have grant dollars available to do these projects, that's money well spent versus shifting it on the taxpayer and using taxpayer dollars to clean the site up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's frugal, right? I think it's better to go through the grant process and get the state's money, the set-asides that they have for these sorts of projects, even though it may take longer, rather than, again, trying to include things in the capital budget for building demolition, for example. So again, it's a longer process, but in the end, I think there's savings to the city in that we don't have to foot the bill for a lot of the redevelopment of or cleanup of the site.
Yeah, I'll just, what surprises me most is that you never really think about a private entity being able to do their business for many decades and just doing their thing, making their money, feeding their family, taking care of their employees, building their products, contributing to that. But in the end, thinking about when it's over, the ability to just kind of walk away, and then the taxpayers / government is kind of tasked with dealing with the fallout ramifications of everything that transpired during that time that it was up and running. And there's a lot of questions, I guess, about that, like how that plays out. Yes.
Yeah, and
something you think about.
It's not something the city has to participate in, but it is very common that communities, cities will play an active role in what's called brownfield redevelopment, or
Right.
contaminated, underutilized, vacant site, former manufacturing sites. And across the nation, that trend, has been popular for the last several decades. And because of that, the federal government and the state governments have created these programs, right? These idle sites programs, or these cleanup programs, so that municipalities can be more active in doing that. Because otherwise, we're very limited on what we can do to a vacant site like the foundry. I mean, it's been there vacant since 2017, and now we're starting to slowly be more proactive, because it could sit and could have sat for several more years if we didn't act. So again, I think it's a good thing that we have that control and that ability, because even though we're investing time, city time, and maybe there would be some small amount of city dollars, The goal is to create new development. New development will create new value. New
Right.
value means additional taxes for the city to, right, recycle through and kind of justify the city and staff time towards redevelopment.
It's like a psychological, if you see it there just waiting, like right now we know there's a plan and we're trying to get that out to the people. Like there's a plan, things are happening. This isn't the end of it. But if you don't have a plan and it's just sitting there, it's a psychological drain, I think, on a community to say, like a lot of people, and I don't agree with this at all, and I'll fight them tooth and nail on it, but we are not a dying community. We are taking a turn and we're moving in a new direction, and the future is bright, as long as we, as the people, because again, it's nice that we were able to work with the state and the federal government to get some money in order to help with some of these projects. Granted, in the end, it's all still our money. I mean, they got it one way or another through taxes, and it's coming back to us as a community, as any other community. And it's good that they help us. But when it comes down to the thriving and personality, energy, future of a community, it comes down to the people that live there. And if they're drained and beat and they're kind of quit and don't want to be a part of helping the future, it's going to be tough to get a city to move forward and create a new future for itself. And that's not what I see Wisconsin Rapids as. I see people that are smart, ingenuitive, hardworking, creative, fun, and I think people are working really hard to move forward. So to be able to take this kind of a black eye, in the end right now it's a black eye. In the end, it was a great, it was part of the economy. They were making money and providing for families. Now it's a black eye and it's just kind of sitting there. So I'm glad that you're working hard to make sure that it eventually will be taken care of so we can move forward and move past that. And it'll be something of the past. And the mill's doing what it's doing to create a new life for itself. And I appreciate all the work you've done to help put all those pieces in place. So thank you for that. You had one other thing you were on.
Yeah, one other comment I wanted to make is the city is playing an active role in historic preservation. Previously, they had not been as active, and I think we've seen a lot of buildings be demolished. I don't think a lot of homeowners in more historic areas, when it comes to architecture and date of construction, have really embraced kind of the historic character of those neighborhoods. So we are looking to start an intensive survey. This will kick off by a consultant from UWM, from their archaeological division and historic division. And they will be up here and they will be driving through the community and basically surveying all of the homes and commercial properties within the community and determining whether or not there's historic significance. If they've identified historic significance, they will identify potential future historic districts. If we then pursue the adoption of those historic districts, those homeowners within those districts can apply for tax credits from the state and federal government if they perform historic improvements. For example, if somebody had cedar shake siding and they wanted to replace it with cedar shake siding, they can apply for 20% tax credits, possibly more now. I believe there was some recent legislation, but that they could then claim through their taxes and get a credit back essentially for that historic improvement. With historic districts, we can also embrace the district itself. We can create walking tours. We can create street signs. We can, again, it basically helps build sense of place, right? Circling back to the placemaking in the community. A lot of communities that have historic districts, when you're in the historic district and they take pride of ownership. And I think people will invest more in their properties. It'll increase property values, and it's just a good thing for the community. So these historic districts are anticipated to hopefully be in place, if some are identified in the intensive survey, within the next 2 to 3 years. Again, there's a process by which we're looking for the State Historic Preservation Office to assist us with some grants. And then we have to nominate the districts to the National Register of Historic Places, and then we have to wait on that nomination. So again, 2 to 3 year process with the hopes that we open the door to homeowners and businesses that want to make those historic improvements. And the one thing I want to clarify too, because we get this question a lot, is will this prevent me from doing what I want to my historic property? And the answer is no. If you're in a nationally registered district, you can still take your cedar shake siding and remove it and put up vinyl siding. You just would not be able to access tax credits if you did that. But you can still remove your terracotta shingles or whatever it is and put asphalt shingles on. There's nothing with it. Being within a national district does not restrict you in any way as a homeowner to developing your property as you see fit from a building standpoint.
Yeah, I'm excited about that to see. I know we've lost probably a lot of houses that we wish, in hindsight, that we wouldn't have lost, but the ones that are here are some beautiful homes and have been well taken care of. And I look forward to being able to promote that, to a higher level as different, people, groups are taking on more of that tourist aspect of the community, not realizing already how well we do in tourism and how many people we bring in for whether it's sporting events and different activities that are going on. So that'll be another part of that economic picture. So,
Yes.
that was weird.
Well then,
I think I
that's a sign that maybe we are
good.
wrapped up with the interview.
Again,
Thanks for having me here, though.
Yeah, you're welcome. I appreciate you sitting down and trying to, reach out to the people and get some more information out there. And again, I know it's a tough job that you do. I appreciate it. Thanks for the work you're doing.
Thank you, Mayor.